Welcome back to PSC Tech Bytes. This is the last episode of this series about the MGT component, and specifically today I want to talk with you about the MGT providers, which are authentication providers that we can use to authenticate and get an access token to consume the Microsoft Graph. In MGT we have different flavors of providers. And specifically we have provider for MSAL, the Microsoft Authentication Library, for Electron, for SharePoint Framework, Teams, as a proxy, as well as you can create your custom MGT providers if you like. Once you have defined an MGT provider, all the MGT components will rely on the provider to get the access token to consume the Microsoft Graph in the backend. And in order to use the MGT providers, you can either use a code-based approach or you can simply declare them in the HTML code of your pages. In a SharePoint Framework solution, for example, if you want to use the MGT provider for SharePoint, you simply need to use in any of the SharePoint Framework components a reference to the npm package at Microsoft/mgt-spfx. And eventually, if you want to use the React components of MGT, you will also have to import the npm package called at Microsoft/mgt-react. Once you have done that, you can configure in the onInit method of the web part, for example, the default provider for MGT, and then you can use the React components in your React UI in order to render the MGT components in the page. So, like always, let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to do that in practice. So, this is a sample web part that I just created in which I have a text box where I can write the UPN of a user. And here you can see we have the MGT person component rendering the UI for the person I'm providing. How does it work? Well, if I go to Visual Studio Code, first of all I have the packages at Microsoft MGT-SPFX and at Microsoft MGT-React. Then in the web part I have an import for providers and SharePoint provider from at Microsoft MGT-SPFX. And in the onInit method of my web part, I simply configure the global provider in the providers type as a new instance of the SharePoint provider, providing the context of my SharePoint Framework web part. Moreover, in the React component behind the scene of the rendering of my web part, I have an import for the person component from the at Microsoft MGT React from this specific version. And in the render method of my web part, I simply render the person component, configuring the person query to target the person property in the state of my React component. And that's it. Really simple and straightforward. And you can do that with whatever React component of MGT that you like, as long as you have configured the global provider as the SharePoint Framework global provider. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. Remember, subscribe to this channel. Thank you.